Welcome back to my channel, folks. It has been a minute, and when I say a minute, I mean almost 2 months. Apologies. I also have had a ton going on over the last pretty much 6-7 weeks, so unfortunately have not been able to post any videos. If you want to know why I've been so busy, you can check out the short that I put out last week explaining that I would be back with my first full-length video in a long time this week. I'm very excited to be back, although I did somehow pick the day of a very scary thunderstorm to make time to film. So if you can hear that in the background, I apologize, but I am very excited to be back, and it's important to be here because, let's be honest, this is the time. This is the post-season review time, and I want to know for myself and for all of you, do we think that the 2022 F1 season was actually any good looking back at it? Let's get into it. I feel like I should start with things that were good because it's so easy to focus on the negatives and what we didn't like. So let's at least try and introduce or kick this off with a bit of positivity, because we did, to be fair, have some lovely, even wholesome moments during the year, and some of them actually just recently. K-Mag, for example, his sprint race pole, euphoric just watching it, never mind being in that Haas garage. I literally can't imagine how unreal that felt. Even just his return to the sport at the beginning of the year was an awesome moment, because I know that myself and lots of other F1 fans were really happy for him to take that seat at Haas. We had another first. We had Nick de Vries scoring points on his F1 debut, which obviously helped to get him his seat at AlphaTauri, which he's going to be undertaking next year. We had another first. We had Carlos Sainz got his maiden victory in F1, which kind of seems mad when you think about it, that he had not won a race yet, but when you consider the dominance of Mercedes and Red Bull over the last over the last decade at this point, 8 years for Mercedes and the last 2 years for Red Bull, you can kind of understand, you know, why he hadn't got that win yet, so was really happy for him. We had Mercedes recently finally getting that win, and it was George Russell's first win, another first. Thrilled for him. He was really emotional after the race, and after he had kept everything so calm, so cool and collected for what was really an awful season for at least the first 50% of it, I was absolutely thrilled for him and for the team. Honestly, all the work that they put into getting themselves into that point. They felt like they had one win in them at minimum this year, and they got it, so box ticked. Congrats, guys and gals. But we had all those firsts, and then we had, you know, we gotta say it, we gotta give it to him, Max Verstappen's dominant performances on track. He was pretty much unstoppable. He had the whole of the Red Bull team behind him, whether we like it or not, and you just can't argue with the performances that this guy has put in this year. I think it's been fantastic, and we have to give him his credit. So those are my kind of big moments that were really positive, but drop a comment down below and tell me what your number one and number two, I'm not going to make you narrow it down to just one choice, number one and number two best moments of the 2022 F1 season have been. Okay, now it's time for the bad and the ugly, and let's be honest, there's been not even a good amount, like too much bad and ugly. You know, you need some drama throughout the season, bit of spice. I'm happy for the spice. Also, excuse Hulk making noise on the bed. He's breaking down a box for me, being very, very helpful. But it's been on track, it's been off track, it's been in governance, it's been in team communications, it's been in media communications. It's really been everywhere. So let's get into a few of the moments that have really, really got my goat. Let's start with the FIA's mismanagement of the budget cap process. I have shared my thoughts, many thoughts on this through both the Women in Sport podcast on Red FM, which I'll have linked up here for you, and also on Twitter. And I still have feels about it. It was embarrassing, and the vagueness and the lack of forthcoming detail, I should say, from the FIA around the breaches, around the penalties, really just went to show that they didn't want to have to make this announcement. They didn't want to have this conversation, and particularly they did not want to have it about Red Bull. And it was embarrassing. It was ugly. There were times where people would say to me, you know, non-F1 fans would say to me, what on earth is going on? Like, can you explain this? And truly, I couldn't explain the FIA's behaviour against what they had originally set out. And, you know, Christian Horner may have thought that the penalties Red Bull were given were draconian. Many people would disagree with him, but I think the way the whole thing was handled was just an absolute shambles, and it really reflected very poorly on Formula One as a sport. Also in the ugly category, we have to mention the tractor on track in Suzuka in the rain. Just incredible that was allowed to happen again on the same track in the same type of conditions as what led ultimately to the death of Jules Bianchi not even 10 years ago. And it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible that happened again. It's even more incredible the reaction that came from the race directors and the FIA. I think that it was, again, really disappointing to see the drivers sort of have the finger pointed at them as being the bad guy, when clearly this scenario was not of their creation. They did not put the tractor out there on the track, on the racing line, in those conditions. And really, it was a very scary moment for many of them, and one that I mean, originally we all said we hoped to never see this again, but lo and behold, we did. I think there's a huge amount there for them to answer for. They did say that there would be a review of the scenario and that there would be potentially changes made to processes. I really hope that comes to be true, because if not, the sport is just being allowed to be even more dangerous than it already is. And let's be honest, we've seen some close shaves over the past couple of years. Romain Grosjean, for example. We just don't need these drivers being under any more potential danger and having to second guess themselves getting into their cars. Alright, let's go from ugly to bad. I view this as ugly, but not quite as terrible. So that's how you can think about categorizing this. And also, as I go back to the ugly for a second, don't forget to drop a comment down below with the ugliest moments that you felt happened throughout the season. But coming back to the bad, I didn't enjoy the Drivers' Championship being won with so many races left to go in the season. It felt anticlimactic. And look, I know I can't go down to the wire every single year. I didn't necessarily enjoy the stress of Abu Dhabi 2021. It made me really angry and I was very confused. But at least we got a championship fight. We got a real battle between Lewis and Max, and we truly did not get that this year. Not even, it's all well and good there being a strong team, the strongest team, let's say this year, Red Bull, but when there can't even be a fight within that team, that's when the competition really goes out of it. And let's also remember that the cost cap and the breach of that could also have impacted Red Bull's strength this year versus the other teams. So I think that whole part of it just didn't feel great to me. I want to see more competition. I want to see more drivers, a greater range of drivers competing for wins. And I know that we had the new regulations this year and people kind of took different directions with their car development that either worked or did not work. But I just didn't love... Shake it off. Hulk shaking it off. I just didn't love how it ended, it just didn't feel exciting. And I'm hoping that next year, with the improvements and the sort of figuring out and the catching up that has been done by some of the other teams, that they'll be able to put it to Red Bull a lot more next season, because we need more of what we saw at the beginning with Leclerc versus Verstappen. We need that. I don't care who it's between, we just need more of it, please. Let's talk about the regulation changes that I just mentioned. I'm putting them in the bad category, but only because I think that there was so much said about them in the run-up to the season starting. We didn't know how they were going to pan out. We didn't know who got them right, who got them wrong. There were teams that, unveiled a car in the early part of 2022 that then looked very different to what actually ended up on track. So we didn't know. And I think there was a lot of expectation set early on. And I think probably too much expectation. We did see at the beginning, certainly for the first couple of races, there was a lot more opportunity for kind of everyone on the grid, and that was great to see. But over time, the deltas began to creep in, and Sky Sports in particular, if you watch Sky Sports F1 as your main provider for coverage, you would have heard them during the Abu Dhabi race say, there's been like 25% increase in the amount of overtaking year on year. But that's over an aggregate of a season. We still got some very boring races, and I understand that not every track is going to provide, high octane overtaking entertainment. However, it was noticeable this year how many races, even with these new regulations, you got caught in a DRS train, or you just couldn't, the porpoising made it too difficult for you to really excel or get the most out of the car. And I think it did dent things, I think, more than we expected it to. And again, coming back to the development time and the improvements that have been made already by the teams coming into next season, I really do hope that we can make the most of these regulations that are this large in the amount that they are changing. Will never make the world of difference in the space of one season. It will often take 2, 3, 4 years for these to really come to fruition. And we already know we're getting more big changes in 2026. So let's see what happens. But I would really love to see just the regulations give us more of what we thought we were going to get, or at least give us a better idea of the expectations that are at the right level of expectations. Okay, that's everything that I have for you on my first video back. We had thunderstorms, we had noise from the dog, we've had it all. But what I would love to see, as always, are your comments. So please do comment down below what the good, the bad, and the ugly was for you out of this 2022 Formula 1 season. You can rate it out of 10, you can give it a number of stars out of 5, however you want to do it. I personally have not found it to be one of the most exciting of the years that I have watched. I've been watching for 20 years now, and I'm just hoping for a bit more fun next year and a bit less toxicity off the track and on the track. So that's my 2 cents, and hopefully you enjoyed this video. Please give it a like and subscribe. I'm still hoping to hit 500 subscribers by the end of the year so that I can activate YouTube's community feature and start going live for you all next year during the races. So make sure you subscribe, and until then, until the next video, enjoy your racing.